the scorching heat of the Afghan desert, where mirages dance on the horizon and death lurks behind every sand dune, Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez thought she was simply escorting visiting officials on a routine inspection. She had no idea that within the next 6 hours, her steady hands and eagle eyes would be all that stood between her fellow soldiers in a massacre that would have made international headlines. What started as a mundane Tuesday morning coffee run would transform into the longest day of her military career, testing every skill she had learned in sniper school and forcing her to make split-second decisions that would haunt her dreams for years to come. This is the true story of how one woman's exceptional marksmanship turned a coordinated terrorist attack into a testament of human courage under fire. The enemy had been watching. They had been planning. And they had chosen what they believed was the perfect moment to strike. They just hadn't counted on Maria Rodriguez being there that day.
Maria Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she adjusted her body armor in the pre-dawn darkness of Forward Operating Base Phoenix. The Afghan summer was merciless, and even at 5 in the morning the temperature was already climbing toward what would become another scorching day.
She had been stationed at this remote outpost for 8 months now, long enough to know that the desert heat could be as deadly as any enemy combatant. The base sat strategically positioned in the Helmand province, a crucial checkpoint along supply routes that kept coalition forces supplied and operational.
Housed approximately 200 personnel, from combat troops to logistics specialists, medical staff, and intelligence analysts. Phoenix had earned its reputation as one of the most secure installations in the region, but Maria knew that in Afghanistan, security was always relative. Her morning routine was as predictable as the sunrise. Coffee first, always coffee. The mess hall served something that loosely resembled the beverage she remembered from home, but after months of deployment, her palate had adjusted. She sat at her usual table near the eastern window, watching the sun paint the mountains in shades of gold and orange. The view never got old, even if everything else about this place had become monotonously familiar. "Another beautiful day in paradise," commented Sergeant Thompson, sliding his tray across from her. Jack Thompson was her spotter, a lanky kid from Ohio who had an uncanny ability to read wind patterns and calculate distances that made him invaluable in their sniper team. He had been her partner for the better part of a year, and their professional relationship had evolved into something resembling friendship.
"Paradise is a strong word," Maria replied, stirring powdered creamer into her coffee. "More like a really expensive camping trip with people trying to kill you." Thompson chuckled, but his expression grew more serious as he glanced around the mess hall. "You hear about the VIP visit today? Colonel Martinez briefed the squad leaders last night. Apparently we're getting some big shots from Kabul, maybe even some State Department folks." Maria raised an eyebrow. VIP visits were always complicated affairs that required extensive security preparations and disrupted normal operations. As part of the base's sniper team, she would likely be involved in providing overwatch during any movements outside the wire. The thought of spending hours in the blazing sun scanning empty desert through a scope was not particularly appealing. "Any details on who's coming or why?" she asked. "Something about evaluating infrastructure development projects. You know how it goes. Suits from Washington want to see how their money is being spent. Take some photos, write some reports." Thompson took a bite of his eggs, making a face at the taste. "The usual dog and pony show." Maria nodded knowingly. She had participated in several such visits during her deployment. Politicians and bureaucrats would arrive in armored convoys, tour carefully selected portions of the base, meet with local officials in highly controlled environments, and depart with glowing reports about progress being made. The reality on the ground was always more complicated than what these visitors saw, but maintaining the illusion was part of the job. After breakfast, she made her way to the armory to check her equipment. Her rifle was a customized M24 sniper weapon system, a weapon she had been using for over 3 years and knew as intimately as her own heartbeat. She performed the same inspection routine every morning, checking the action, examining the scope mounts, verifying the zero on her optics. Maintenance was critical in the desert environment where sand could infiltrate the smallest spaces and heat could affect precision. The armory was managed by Staff Sergeant Williams, a grizzled veteran who treated every weapon under his care like a precious child. He watched approvingly as Maria went through her inspection routine, occasionally offering suggestions or pointing out potential issues. "Heard you might be pulling over watch duty today," Williams said, organizing ammunition on metal shelves. "VIP visit always makes everyone nervous." "Not my first rodeo," Maria replied, working the bolt action to ensure smooth operation. "Though I admit I'd rather be doing anything else in this heat. Could be worse. Could be raining." Maria looked out the small window at the cloudless sky and laughed. "Right. I forgot about the famous Afghan monsoon season." The morning briefing was held in the command center,
a climate-controlled building that served as the nervous system of the base. Major Harrison, the base commander, stood before a large map of the local area marked with various symbols indicating known threat zones, patrol routes, and observation posts. The assembled personnel included squad leaders, intelligence analysts, and specialists like Maria who would have specific roles in the day's activities. "Ladies and gentlemen," Major Harrison began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had been making life-and-death decisions for over 2 decades. "Today we host a delegation from the Provincial Reconstruction Team, accompanied by representatives from the State Department and Afghan Ministry of Development. Their mission is to assess progress on several infrastructure projects in the region." He used a laser pointer to highlight several locations on the map. "The delegation will arrive at 1100 hours via helicopter and will conduct site visits to the water treatment facility, the school construction project, and the medical clinic. Total time on ground is estimated at 6 hours. Maria studied the map, automatically calculating sight lines and potential threat vectors from each location. The water treatment facility was particularly concerning. It sat in a valley with multiple elevated positions that could conceal hostile forces. The school was better positioned, but the medical clinic was located in an area that had seen increased insurgent activity in recent weeks. Rodriguez and Thompson will provide overwatch from Observation Post 7 during the water facility visit," the major continued. "You'll have clear sight lines to the target area and can cover the approach routes from the north and east." Observation Post 7 was positioned on a rocky outcropping about 800 meters from the water treatment facility. It was a good position with excellent fields of fire, but Maria knew it would be like sitting in an oven for several hours. The concrete bunker offered protection from small arms fire but did little to shield occupants from the relentless heat. "Intelligence reports indicate minimal threat activity in the target areas," added Lieutenant Foster, the base intelligence officer. "However, we have noted increased radio chatter in the region over the past 48 hours. Nothing specific, but enough to warrant elevated alert status. Radio chatter was always a concern. Insurgent groups had become sophisticated in their communications, often using coded language and switching frequencies to avoid detection. Increased chatter usually indicated something was being planned, though it could be anything from a coordinated attack to a wedding celebration." After the briefing, Maria and Thompson spent time studying satellite imagery and recent patrol reports from the areas they would be monitoring. Intelligence gathering was a continuous process, and even small details could prove crucial in a tactical situation. They noted locations of recent roadside bomb discoveries, patterns of civilian movement, and any changes to the physical landscape that might provide concealment for hostile forces. "Look at this," Thompson said, pointing to a series of photographs taken over the past week. "New construction here, maybe 50 meters from the school site. Could be innocent, but the timing is suspicious." Maria examined the images closely. The construction appeared to be a small building, perhaps a shop or residence. While such development was generally encouraged as a sign of normalizing conditions, it also created new hiding places and potential firing positions for anyone with hostile intentions. "We should flag this for the patrol teams," she said. "Have them do a closer inspection when they sweep the area before the VIP arrival." The hours before the delegation's arrival passed in a blur of final preparations, equipment checks, communications tests, coordination with other security elements. All the mundane but critical tasks that meant the difference between a successful mission and a catastrophe. Maria found herself thinking about her family back home in Texas, something she tried to avoid during operational periods but couldn't entirely suppress when facing potentially dangerous situations. Her younger sister had sent a letter the previous week, full of news about college classes and part-time jobs and all the normal concerns of a 20-year-old civilian. Reading it had provided a welcome reminder of the world beyond military operations, but it also highlighted the vast gulf between her current reality and the life she had left behind. Sometimes she wondered if she would ever be able to fully bridge that gap when her deployment ended. At 10:30 hours, she and Thompson loaded their gear into a Humvee for transport to Observation Post 7. The vehicle was equipped with additional armor plating and reinforced windows, modifications that added weight and reduced fuel efficiency but provided crucial protection against improvised explosive devices and small arms fire. The driver was Specialist Garcia, a young man from California who had developed an impressive ability to navigate the rough terrain around the base at high speed while maintaining a vigilant watch for potential threats. The drive to the observation post took them through a landscape that never failed to impress Maria with its stark beauty. Rocky hills and deep valleys stretched to the horizon, broken by occasional patches of green where underground springs provided enough water for vegetation. It was a harsh environment that had shaped the character of its inhabitants for countless generations, creating a people who were resilient, resourceful, and deeply suspicious of outsiders. "You ever wonder what this place was like before the war?" Thompson asked as they bounced over a particularly rough section of road. "Which war?" Garcia called back from the driver's seat. This place has been having wars for thousands of years. Maria considered the question while watching a shepherd guide his flock across a distant hillside. The man seemed oblivious to their presence, focused entirely on his animals and the ancient rhythms of survival in an unforgiving landscape. She wondered if he viewed them as liberators, occupiers, or simply another temporary complication in a life already filled with challenges. Probably a lot quieter, she finally answered. And a lot more dangerous, depending on your perspective. They reached the observation post with 40 minutes to spare before the scheduled arrival of the VIP helicopter. The position consisted of a reinforced concrete bunker built into the side of a hill, with narrow firing ports that provided excellent visibility while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. Previous occupants had made various improvements over the years, including camouflage netting, communication equipment, and basic amenities like folding chairs and a small table. Maria began setting up her rifle while Thompson established their communications link with Base Command and began studying the target area through his spotting scope. The routine was familiar and comforting to professionals working in practiced coordination to create a lethal combination of observation and precision fire capability. Base, this is Overwatch 7, Thompson spoke into his radio headset. In position and ready for operations. Copy Overwatch 7. Delegation ETA 15 minutes. Maintain constant observation and report any suspicious activity. The helicopter appeared as a small speck on the horizon, growing larger as it approached the base. Maria watched through her scope as the aircraft circled once before landing at the designated helipad near the main compound. Even at this distance, she could see figures disembarking and being greeted by base personnel. Showtime, Thompson murmured, adjusting his spotting scope to track the convoy of vehicles that would soon be heading their way. Maria settled into her shooting position, finding the familiar balance point between comfort and readiness that allowed her to maintain precise aim for extended periods. The weight of the rifle felt reassuring in her hands, a tool she had trained with for countless hours until its operation became as natural as breathing. She had no way of knowing that in the next few hours, those countless hours of training would prove to be the difference between life and death for dozens of her fellow soldiers. The convoy of 3 armored Humvees kicked up clouds of dust as it wound its way along the dirt road toward the water treatment facility. Maria tracked their progress through her scope, noting the disciplined spacing between vehicles and the professional manner in which the escort team maintained their security posture. The lead vehicle carried the VIP delegation, while the trailing vehicles contained additional security personnel and technical experts who would assess the infrastructure project. Convoy is approximately 2 minutes out from the facility, Thompson reported into his radio, simultaneously scanning the surrounding area through his spotting scope. The desert landscape appeared peaceful, with only the occasional bird disturbing the morning stillness. The temperature was already climbing toward uncomfortable levels, and heat shimmer was beginning to distort distant objects. Maria made minor adjustments to her scope settings to compensate for the changing atmospheric conditions. Precision shooting required constant attention to environmental factors that could affect bullet trajectory, including temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and wind speed. In the desert, these factors could change rapidly and dramatically, turning a perfect shot into a complete miss in a matter of minutes. Movement 2 o'clock, approximately 1,200 meters, Thompson said quietly, his voice carrying the subtle tension that indicated potential concern. Looks like a single individual, possibly a shepherd. Maria shifted her aim to the indicated direction and quickly located the figure Thompson had spotted. Through her scope, she could see a man wearing traditional Afghan clothing, leading a small group of goats across a rocky slope. He appeared to be following a well-worn path that probably dated back generations, and his movements seemed natural and unhurried. Appears benign, she responded after several seconds of observation. Normal movement pattern consistent with civilian herding activity. The convoy reached the water treatment facility and began the process of establishing a security perimeter. Soldiers dismounted and took up positions at key points around the complex, while the VIP delegation was escorted to the main building for their inspection tour. The entire operation was executed with the precision that came from extensive training and experience in hostile environments. Maria continued her methodical scan of the surrounding area, dividing the terrain into sectors and examining each one carefully before moving to the next. It was tedious work that required intense concentration, but she had learned long ago that vigilance was the price of survival in combat zones. The enemy often spent days or even weeks studying their targets, looking for patterns and weaknesses that could be exploited. Base, this is Overwatch 7, Thompson transmitted. Delegation has arrived at primary target and security is established. No hostile activity observed. Copy Overwatch 7. Maintain watch and report any changes. The water treatment facility represented months of collaborative effort between coalition forces, Afghan government agencies, and international development organizations.
The complex of concrete buildings and metal pipes would eventually provide clean water to thousands of people in the surrounding region, a tangible improvement to lives that had been shaped by centuries of hardship and deprivation. Maria had participated in several similar protection missions during her deployment, and she had seen firsthand the positive impact these projects could have on local communities. Clean water meant healthier children, more productive agriculture, and hope for a better future. It was easy to become cynical about the military mission in Afghanistan, but projects like this reminded her that their presence had purposes beyond purely military objectives. 20 minutes into the facility visit, Thompson noticed something that made him pause in his scanning routine. A pickup truck had appeared on a distant ridge, approximately 1,500 meters from their position. The vehicle seemed to be observing the water treatment facility, though it was too far away to determine the intentions of its occupants. Possible surveillance 11 o'clock, ridge line, Thompson reported, adjusting his spotting scope for a clearer view. Single vehicle appears stationary. Maria immediately shifted her attention to the indicated location. Through her scope, she could see the pickup truck clearly, noting its position and the fact that it had an unobstructed view of the facility below. While the presence of civilian vehicles in the area was not unusual, the timing and positioning of this particular truck warranted careful monitoring. "I see it," Maria confirmed. "Truck appears to be occupied, but I cannot determine the number of individuals or their intentions from this distance." The truck remained in position for approximately 10 minutes before driving away along what appeared to be a local road. Its departure seemed unhurried and natural, but Maria made note of its description and last known direction of travel. Intelligence analysts would later correlate this information with other observations to determine if it represented a genuine threat. "Vehicle has departed the area," Thompson reported, "last seen heading north along local Route 7. The VIP tour of the water treatment facility lasted slightly longer than scheduled, as the delegation showed considerable interest in the technical aspects of the system and its potential for expansion to serve additional communities." Maria could see the group moving between different areas of the complex, stopping frequently for demonstrations and discussions. During this time, her scope detected movement in several other locations around the facility. Most proved to be civilians going about their daily activities, farmers tending to irrigation ditches, children playing near a small village, women gathering fuel wood from scattered bushes. The presence of normal civilian activity was generally considered a positive indicator, suggesting that local residents felt secure enough to continue their routines. However, one particular movement pattern caught her attention and held it. 3 men on motorcycles had appeared on separate roads, leading toward the facility area, maintaining considerable distances from each other but all converging toward the general vicinity of the VIP visit. While motorcycle travel was common in the region, the timing and coordination of these movements seemed suspicious. "Thompson, check your 9 o'clock. Approximate range, 2,000 meters. Also, your 3 o'clock at about 1,800 meters, and your 12 o'clock at roughly 2,500 meters. 3 separate motorcycles all heading generally toward the facility." Thompson quickly located each of the vehicles Maria had identified and studied them carefully through his spotting scope. His experience as a spotter had trained him to notice patterns and anomalies that might escape less experienced observers. After several minutes of observation, he shared Maria's concerns about the coordination of the movements. "Confirmed. 3 motorcycles approaching from different directions. Movement appears coordinated, though they're maintaining significant separation. This type of coordinated movement was consistent with insurgent tactics that had been observed in other attacks on coalition forces. By approaching from multiple directions, hostile forces could complicate defensive responses and potentially overwhelm security measures through simultaneous attacks from different vectors." "Base, this is Overwatch 7, Thompson transmitted with increased urgency. "We have 3 motorcycles approaching the facility area from different directions. Movement appears coordinated and timing is suspicious. Recommend heightened alert status. Copy, Overwatch 7. We are tracking your report. Continue observation and update as situation develops." Maria could feel her heart rate increasing as she tracked the approaching motorcycles. Her training had prepared her for moments like this, when subtle indicators could herald the beginning of deadly encounters. The key was to remain calm and focused, gathering as much information as possible while being prepared to act decisively if the situation escalated. The first motorcycle stopped approximately 800 meters from the facility and appeared to establish an observation position. The rider dismounted and seemed to be studying the area through binoculars or a similar device. The second motorcycle continued moving, but at a reduced speed, as if its rider was conducting reconnaissance of the security perimeter. The third motorcycle was the most concerning. It had moved to within about 600 meters of the facility and stopped in an area that provided concealment behind a small building. Maria could barely see the vehicle, but its position was ideal for launching an attack or serving as a staging point for additional forces. Movement at motorcycle position 3, Maria reported. Rider has dismounted and appears to be preparing something. Cannot determine specifics due to concealment, but body language suggests hostile intent. Through her scope, she could see the figure moving with purpose around the motorcycle, handling objects that could be weapons or explosive devices. The man's movements were quick and efficient, suggesting familiarity with whatever task he was performing. Base, Overwatch 7. Recommend immediate extraction of VIP delegation. We have multiple indicators of imminent hostile action. Copy, Overwatch 7. Extraction order has been given. Delegation is being moved to secure location. Maria watched as soldiers at the facility began rapidly reorganizing their positions to facilitate a quick departure. The VIP delegation was hustled toward their vehicles, while security personnel established Overwatch positions and prepared to provide covering fire if necessary. The entire evolution was executed with the smooth efficiency that came from extensive rehearsal. Movement, movement, movement! Thompson's voice carried sharp urgency. Multiple dismounts from all 3 motorcycle positions. I count at least 8 individuals, all armed with automatic weapons. Maria's scope confirmed Thompson's observation. Men were emerging from concealed positions around each motorcycle, carrying assault rifles and what appeared to be rocket-propelled grenade launchers. Their movements were coordinated and purposeful, indicating a level of training and preparation that marked them as serious adversaries rather than opportunistic attackers. Hostile forces confirmed, Maria transmitted. At least 8 armed individuals in tactical formation. This is a coordinated attack. The lead elements of the attacking force were already advancing toward the facility, using natural terrain features for concealment as they closed the distance to effective weapons range. Maria could see muzzle flashes beginning to appear as the attackers opened fire on the security perimeter. Engagement imminent, she reported, settling into her firing position and beginning the mental calculations necessary for precision shooting at multiple ranges and wind conditions. Request permission to engage. Overwatch 7, you are cleared to engage. Protect the delegation and our personnel. The moment Maria had trained for throughout her military career had finally arrived. The theoretical scenarios practiced countless times on firing ranges were about to become deadly reality. She controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and began the process of prioritizing targets based on threat assessment and tactical significance. The battle for Forward Operating Base Phoenix was about to begin, and the outcome would depend largely on the skills of 2 soldiers positioned on a rocky hillside with nothing but their weapons, their training, and their determination to protect their fellow Americans. Maria's first shot came at exactly 11:47 a.m. local time, the sound of her rifle cutting through the desert air like thunder. The target was a figure carrying what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, positioned approximately 900 meters from the water treatment facility. Through her scope, she had watched him preparing to fire at the convoy vehicles, and she knew that a successful rocket attack could kill or wound multiple members of the delegation. The shot was perfect. Years of training had taught her to account for wind speed, temperature, and the target's movement pattern. The bullet found its mark, and the RPG operator dropped instantly, his weapon falling harmlessly to the ground. Maria was already working the bolt action and acquiring her next target before the first man's body hit the earth. Target down, 900 meters, RPG threat eliminated, she reported calmly, her voice betraying none of the adrenaline coursing through her system. Thompson was simultaneously coordinating with base command and spotting additional targets for Maria to engage. His role was crucial. While she focused on the precise mechanics of shooting, he maintained situational awareness and helped prioritize threats based on their immediate danger to friendly forces. Second RPG team, you're 10 o'clock, approximately 700 meters. Thompson called out. 2 individuals, 1 carrying launcher, 1 with ammunition. Maria shifted her aim and quickly located the second rocket team. They were moving tactically, using a small stone wall for concealment as they maneuvered toward a firing position. The man carrying the launcher was partially obscured, but Maria could see enough of his torso to make an effective shot. Her second bullet found its target with the same precision as the first. The rocket operator stumbled and fell while his ammunition carrier dove for cover behind the wall. Maria immediately shifted her aim to cover the concealed position, knowing that the surviving attacker might still pose a threat if he could reach the dropped launcher. Basis is Overwatch 7, Thompson transmitted while continuing to scan for additional threats. We have eliminated 2 RPG operators. Multiple automatic weapons still in play. Convoy needs to move now. The convoy vehicles had started their engines and were beginning to maneuver toward the exit route, but they faced a gauntlet of enemy positions that commanded the road. Maria could see muzzle flashes from at least 4 different locations as automatic weapons fire raked the area around the vehicles. The armored Humvees could withstand small arms fire, but concentrated fire from multiple positions could eventually find weak spots or disable critical systems. Priority target, Thompson called urgently. Machine gun position, you're 2 o'clock, 850 meters. He has line of sight on the convoy route. Maria located the machine gun position and could see the weapons crew working to establish an effective field of fire. The gunner was feeding an ammunition belt into what appeared to be a PKM machine gun, a weapon capable of penetrating light armor at close range. If the convoy moved into the open ground near the facility exit, they would be extremely vulnerable to sustained machine gun fire. The shot was more challenging than her previous engagements. The machine gun crew was positioned behind improved cover, and only portions of the gunner were visible through her scope. Maria waited for the perfect moment, when the gunner raised his head to sight his weapon and fired. The bullet struck the machine gunner in the upper chest, spinning him away from his weapon. His assistant gunner immediately moved to take over the weapon, but Maria was already working her bolt action and preparing for a follow-up shot. The second round caught the assistant gunner before he could bring the machine gun into action, effectively eliminating the weapon system that posed the greatest threat to the convoy. Machine gun team neutralized, Maria reported. Convoy has clear egress route for approximately 60 seconds. The convoy vehicles accelerated rapidly toward the exit road, their engines straining under the weight of armor plating and the urgency of the situation. Maria continued to provide overwatch, scanning for threats that might emerge to engage the fleeing vehicles. Thompson coordinated with the convoy leader and base command to ensure that friendly forces knew the current threat situation and could respond appropriately. Multiple contacts moving toward the facility perimeter, Thompson observed through a spotting scope. Appears to be a coordinated assault on the remaining security element. While the convoy evacuation was succeeding, the soldiers manning the security perimeter around the water treatment facility were now facing a determined attack from multiple directions. Maria could see at least 6 attackers moving toward the facility, using tactical movements that indicated significant training and preparation for this assault. The facility security team consisted of 8 soldiers positioned around the complex in defensive positions that had been prepared weeks earlier. They were well-trained and adequately equipped, but they faced attackers who had obviously studied the facility layout and defensive positions extensively. The insurgents were exploiting blind spots and dead ground with a precision that suggested intimate knowledge of the area. Overwatch 7, this is ground team leader, came a new voice on the radio network. We are taking effective fire from multiple positions. Can you provide supporting fires to break up the assault? Maria immediately began scanning the area around the facility to identify the most threatening enemy positions. The attackers were using a combination of automatic weapons and grenades to suppress the defensive positions while assault teams moved closer to the buildings. She could see the tactical situation developing and recognized that the defenders would be overwhelmed unless the enemy assault could be disrupted. I have eyes on the assault teams, Maria responded. Engaging now. Her next target was an insurgent carrying what appeared to be a bag of grenades moving toward a position from which he could bombard the main defensive position. The shot was complicated by the target's movement and the need to avoid hitting friendly forces positioned nearby. Maria led the target appropriately and fired just as he paused near a large rock. The bullet struck the grenadier's center mass, and the bag of explosives he was carrying detonated in a secondary explosion that illuminated the entire area with orange flame. The blast was powerful enough to knock down another attacker who had been following close behind, temporarily disrupting the assault on that sector of the perimeter. Beautiful shot, Thompson commented, already identifying additional targets. Secondary explosion took out at least one additional hostile. The explosion seemed to shake the confidence of the remaining attackers, several of whom took cover and appeared to be reassessing their approach. Maria used this momentary pause to scan for the enemy commander or any individual who appeared to be coordinating the assault. Leadership targets were always high priority, as their elimination often resulted in confusion and loss of tactical coordination among remaining forces. Possible leader, you're 11 o'clock, approximately 1,000 meters. Thompson identified. Individual appears to be using radio equipment and directing other elements. Maria found the indicated target and studied him carefully through her scope. He was positioned behind substantial cover but occasionally exposed himself to observe the battle and communicate with his subordinates. She would need to wait for the right moment when he presented a clear shot, but eliminating him could significantly degrade the enemy's ability to coordinate their attack.
The opportunity came when the insurgent leader moved to a different position to get a better view of the facility. For approximately 3 seconds, he was silhouetted against the sky as he climbed over a low rock wall. Maria's shot was instantaneous and precise, striking the target before he could reach the safety of his new position. "Leader down," she reported. "Enemy coordination should be degraded." The effect was almost immediate. The coordinated assault on the facility began to break down as individual attackers lost tactical direction and began operating independently. Some continued their advance toward the defensive positions, but others appeared confused and hesitant without clear leadership. Maria continued engaging targets of opportunity, focusing on attackers who posed the most immediate threats to the facility defenders. Her ammunition supply was beginning to run low, but each shot was carefully aimed and precisely delivered. Thompson kept track of her round count and coordinated with Base Command to ensure that resupply could be arranged if the engagement continued much longer. "Base, this is Ground Team Leader. Enemy assault has been broken up. We are conducting cleanup operations on remaining hostiles. Overwatch 7 has been extremely effective in disrupting their attack." Maria felt a surge of satisfaction at the acknowledgement from the ground team, but she maintained her focus on the tactical situation. Combat was unpredictable, and the enemy might have additional forces positioned nearby that could renew the attack or attempt to engage her observation post directly. "Thompson, we need to consider our own security," she said, beginning to scan the areas from which enemy forces might approach their position. "They know our general location now, and we could become a target ourselves." Thompson nodded and began expanding his observation sector to include potential approach routes to their position. The observation post was well positioned for its primary mission, but it could become a trap if enemy forces decided to assault it directly. They had limited ammunition and no immediate reinforcement available if they came under direct attack. "Base, this is Overwatch 7. Thompson transmitted. "Request priority extraction after ground team situation is stabilized. We may have been compromised and could be vulnerable to counterattack. Copy, Overwatch 7. Extraction team will be dispatched as soon as tactical situation permits. Continue to provide overwatch until relieved." Maria maintained her vigil, scanning constantly for signs of additional enemy forces or renewed hostile activity. The immediate threat to the facility appeared to be neutralized, but experience had taught her that insurgent attacks often came in waves, with follow-up forces positioned to exploit any relaxation of defensive vigilance. The sound of helicopter rotors in the distance indicated that quick reaction forces were en route to reinforce the facility and potentially pursue any escaping attackers. The arrival of additional friendly forces would significantly improve the tactical situation and reduce the likelihood of renewed enemy contact. However, Maria knew that their most dangerous moments might still lie ahead. The enemy now knew that an effective sniper team was operating in the area, and they had demonstrated the tactical sophistication to plan complex attacks. If they had additional forces available, those forces would likely prioritize eliminating the Overwatch position that had disrupted their carefully planned assault. The silence that followed the initial engagement was more ominous than the gunfire that had preceded it. Maria maintained her position behind the scope, methodically scanning sectors of terrain that could conceal approaching threats, while Thompson monitored radio communications and kept watch on their flanks. Both soldiers understood that the tactical situation remained highly fluid and potentially dangerous. "Movement, movement," Thompson whispered urgently, his voice barely audible over the radio headset. "You're 6 o'clock, approximately 600 meters. Multiple dismounts moving through the wadi." Maria immediately shifted her position to observe their rear area, using the scope to penetrate the heat shimmer that distorted the distant landscape. The wadi Thompson had identified was a dry creek bed that provided excellent concealment for approaching forces, and she could now see at least 4 figures moving tactically through the depression. These were not the same insurgents from the initial attack on the facility. Their equipment appeared more sophisticated, and their movements demonstrated a level of tactical proficiency that suggested special training or extensive combat experience. They were advancing directly toward the observation post with clear hostile intent. "Base, this is Overwatch 7. Thompson transmitted with controlled urgency. We have multiple hostiles approaching our position from the south. Appears to be a deliberate assault on our location. We need immediate extraction or reinforcement. Copy, Overwatch 7. QRF is still engaged at the facility." Can you hold position for 15 minutes? Maria considered their tactical situation while tracking the approaching enemy force through her scope. 15 minutes was an eternity in combat, especially when facing a determined assault by well-trained opponents who had studied their position and planned their approach carefully. However, abandoning their position would leave the facility defense team without Overwatch support and could jeopardize the entire operation. "We'll hold," Thompson responded, after exchanging glances with Maria.
But we're going to need that extraction as soon as possible. The advancing insurgents had reached a position approximately 400 meters from the observation post and were beginning to establish a base of fire. Maria could see them setting up what appeared to be a medium machine gun and positioning riflemen to provide supporting fire for an assault element that would likely try to approach the bunker from multiple directions. They know our exact location, Maria observed, adjusting her scope settings for the shorter engagement ranges. This isn't a hasty attack, they've been planning this. The realization was sobering. The insurgents had not only planned the attack on the VIP delegation but had also prepared contingencies for neutralizing the Overwatch positions that supported facility security. The level of intelligence gathering and operational planning demonstrated by their adversaries was far more sophisticated than previous attacks in the region. The first shots from the enemy positions came without warning, high-velocity rifle rounds impacting the concrete walls of the bunker and sending chips of stone flying through the narrow firing ports. Maria and Thompson immediately took cover behind the thickest sections of the bunker wall while maintaining the ability to return fire through the protected openings. They're trying to suppress us while assault teams move closer, Thompson analyzed, observing muzzle flashes through his spotting scope. I count at least 2 machine gun positions and multiple riflemen. Maria identified the nearest machine gun position and began calculating the shot parameters. The weapon was partially concealed behind a large boulder, but she could see portions of the gunner when he leaned out to acquire targets. The range was approximately 350 meters, well within her effective engagement envelope despite the incoming suppressive fire. Her shot was fired between bursts of enemy machine gun fire, during a brief lull when the gunner was repositioning his weapon. The bullet struck him in the upper torso, spinning him away from the machine gun and disrupting the weapon system that had been providing the most effective suppressive fire against their position. Machine gun neutralized, Maria reported while working the bolt action and seeking additional targets, but they still have multiple riflemen and at least one more crew-served weapon. The elimination of the machine gun position seemed to intensify the enemy's assault rather than discourage it. Maria could see individual attackers beginning to advance toward the observation post, using tactical bounds and covering fire to minimize their exposure while closing the distance for a final assault. Thompson was dividing his attention between spotting targets for Maria and monitoring their communications with base command. The radio traffic indicated that the Quick Reaction Force was still engaged with enemy forces at the facility and would not be available for immediate extraction or reinforcement of the observation post. We're on our own for the next 10 minutes. Thompson informed Maria while identifying a group of attackers moving through dead ground toward their eastern flank. 3 hostiles moving through the depression to our right, approximately 200 meters and closing. Maria shifted her aim toward the indicated threat and waited for the attackers to expose themselves as they moved through the terrain. The eastern approach to their position required the insurgents to cross several open areas where they would be vulnerable to precision fire, but they were advancing with the skill and determination of experienced fighters. The first attacker appeared at the edge of her field of view, moving rapidly between cover positions. Maria led him appropriately and fired just as he paused to observe the bunker. The shot was good, dropping the target immediately and causing his 2 companions to take cover behind a cluster of large rocks. 1 down on the eastern approach, Maria reported. 2 remaining in cover behind rock formation, approximately 150 meters. The remaining attackers on the eastern flank were now close enough to pose an immediate threat to the observation post. They could potentially approach to grenade range or establish a position from which they could fire directly into the bunker through the firing ports. Maria knew they had to be eliminated quickly before they could advance any closer. One of the concealed attackers exposed himself briefly as he attempted to identify Maria's exact position within the bunker. The shot was challenging due to the limited target exposure and the angle of engagement, but Maria's bullet found its mark, eliminating another threat to their position. Second target down, she confirmed while scanning for the remaining attacker from that group. The third insurgent from the eastern approach had apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Through her scope, Maria could see him retreating toward the wadi where the assault had originated, abandoning the close assault on the observation post in favor of linking up with the remaining enemy forces. However, the tactical situation remained critical. The surviving insurgents had established positions that allowed them to maintain effective fire on the observation post, while preventing Maria and Thompson from providing Overwatch support to the facility defense team. Additionally, ammunition was becoming a concern, as Maria had expended nearly 2/3 of her available rounds during the prolonged engagement. Base Overwatch 7. Ammunition status is becoming critical. We have eliminated multiple threats but are still under effective enemy fire. Request immediate resupply and extraction. Copy Overwatch 7. QRF has secured the facility and is moving to your location. Estimate 5 minutes to link up. The arrival of the quick reaction force could not come soon enough. Maria could hear the sound of helicopter rotors in the distance, indicating that additional forces were being deployed to the area. The insurgents would likely attempt to break contact and escape before they could be overwhelmed by superior numbers and firepower. They're starting to withdraw, Thompson observed, watching enemy positions through his spotting scope. I can see movement to the north. Looks like they're trying to reach the vehicle positions they established earlier. Maria shifted her attention to the withdrawal routes the insurgents were using, looking for opportunities to engage high-value targets or disrupt their escape. While the immediate threat to their position was diminishing, allowing the enemy force to escape intact would enable them to conduct similar attacks in the future. She identified what appeared to be a senior leader attempting to coordinate the withdrawal of his forces. The individual was positioned approximately 500 meters away, partially concealed behind a low ridge, but occasionally exposing himself to communicate with subordinate elements. Maria waited patiently for the right opportunity to take the shot. When the target exposed himself to signal a group of withdrawing fighters, Maria was ready. Her bullet covered the 500 meters in less than a second, striking the insurgent leader and eliminating what appeared to be the tactical commander of the assault force. Leadership target neutralized, Maria reported. Enemy withdrawal should be further disrupted. The elimination of the tactical commander had the desired effect. The organized withdrawal began to break down into individual escape attempts, with small groups of insurgents moving independently toward their extraction points. Some abandoned their heavier weapons in favor of speed, while others appeared to be leaving wounded comrades behind. Overwatch 7, this is QRF leader. We have you in sight and are approaching from the west. Confirm your position and status. Thompson activated a signal device that would identify their position to the approaching friendly forces while remaining invisible to enemy observers. QRF leader Overwatch 7. We are secure in observation post 7. Eastern Wall. 2 personnel, combat effective, low on ammunition. The arrival of the quick reaction force marked the beginning of the end of the engagement. The insurgents who had mounted such a sophisticated attack on both the facility and the observation post were now faced with the prospect of being overwhelmed by superior firepower and numbers. Most chose to continue their withdrawal rather than engage the fresh troops who were arriving to reinforce the area. Maria maintained her overwatch position until the QRF personnel reached the observation post and confirmed that the immediate area was secure. Only then did she allow herself to relax slightly and begin the process of securing her equipment for extraction. Outstanding shooting, commented Staff Sergeant Morrison, the QRF team leader, as he examined the terrain around the observation post. Intelligence estimates that you engaged at least 12 enemy combatants and eliminated or wounded most of them. That's some of the finest marksmanship we've seen in this deployment. Maria nodded acknowledgement but found herself thinking about the tactical implications of what they had experienced. The level of planning and coordination demonstrated by the insurgent force suggested a significant evolution in enemy capabilities and intelligence gathering. Future operations would need to account for this increased sophistication to prevent similar attacks from succeeding. The helicopter extraction arrived 30 minutes later, lifting Maria and Thompson from the observation post that had served as their battlefield for the previous 3 hours. As the aircraft climbed away from the rocky hillside, Maria looked down at the scattered positions where she had engaged enemy forces throughout the day. The tactical success was undeniable. The VIP delegation had been successfully evacuated. The facility defense team had held their positions, and the insurgent assault had been comprehensively defeated. However, the intensity and sophistication of the attack served as a sobering reminder that their adversaries were adapting and evolving their tactics in response to coalition security measures. The debriefing session took place in the air-conditioned comfort of the base command center, a stark contrast to the blazing heat and mortal danger of the observation post where Maria had spent the morning. Major Harrison presided over the meeting, joined by intelligence officers, the QRF team leader, and representatives from the VIP delegation who had remained at the base following their evacuation from the water treatment facility. Ladies and gentlemen, Major Harrison began, consulting the preliminary action report that had been compiled during the afternoon. Today's engagement represents one of the most sophisticated enemy attacks we have encountered in this sector. The coordination and timing of the assault suggests extensive surveillance and planning by a well-trained adversary. Maria sat quietly at the conference table, still processing the events of the morning and the implications of what they had faced. The adrenaline that had sustained her during the firefight had long since faded, leaving behind a profound fatigue that seemed to penetrate to her bones. Thompson sat beside her, occasionally adding technical details to the official record being compiled. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez,
The major continued, turning his attention directly to Maria. Your actions today prevented what could have been a catastrophic loss of life. Intelligence analysis indicates that the enemy force numbered at least 15 combatants, armed with automatic weapons, RPGs, and crew-served machine guns.
Your precision fire neutralized key targets and disrupted their tactical coordination at crucial moments. The intelligence officer, Lieutenant Foster, spread several photographs on the table showing the positions where Maria had engaged enemy combatants. The images had been taken during the cleanup operations that followed the engagement, and they provided graphic evidence of the effectiveness of her marksmanship. Preliminary assessment indicates 12 confirmed enemy casualties, including what appears to be the tactical commander of the assault force, Lieutenant Foster reported. Additionally, significant equipment was captured or destroyed, including 2 RPG launchers, multiple automatic weapons, and a substantial quantity of ammunition and explosives. One of the VIP delegation members, a State Department official named Mr. Towson, Richardson, spoke up from his position at the far end of the table. I want to personally thank both of you for your actions today. If that convoy had been hit by rocket fire, we could have lost multiple personnel, including several Afghan officials who were working closely with our reconstruction efforts. Maria nodded politely but found herself thinking about the broader implications of the attack rather than dwelling on the recognition being offered. The enemy had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded previous intelligence estimates, and they had shown a willingness to accept significant casualties in pursuit of their objectives. These were not characteristics of a degraded insurgent force in decline. The tactical lessons from today's engagement will be incorporated into our security protocols immediately, Major Harrison continued. We clearly need to expand our intelligence collection efforts and reassess our defensive preparations for future VIP visits. Thompson raised his hand and was recognized by the major. Sir, with respect, I think we should also consider the possibility that our communications were compromised. The enemy seemed to know our exact positions and timing with unusual precision. This observation sparked an animated discussion among the intelligence specialists about communication security and operational security practices. Maria listened to the conversation while reviewing her own actions during the engagement, identifying areas where different decisions might have improved the outcome or reduced the risks to friendly forces. The debriefing continued for nearly 2 hours, covering every aspect of the engagement from the initial indicators of enemy activity to the final extraction of personnel from the observation post. Maria found herself answering detailed questions about site pictures, target identification procedures, and ammunition expenditure rates. The information would be used to improve training programs and tactical procedures for other sniper teams operating in similar environments. As the formal debriefing concluded, Major Harrison asked Maria and Thompson to remain behind for a private conversation. When the room had cleared of other personnel, he pulled up a chair and sat down across from them with an expression that was both serious and appreciative. What you two accomplished today goes well beyond normal expectations for soldiers in your positions, he began. You were facing a force that outnumbered you by at least 6-1, operating from prepared positions with crew-served weapons and extensive tactical coordination. By any reasonable standard, you should have been overwhelmed.
Maria shifted uncomfortably in her chair, uncertain how to respond to such praise.
Her training had prepared her for the tactical aspects of the engagement, but she had not anticipated the emotional impact of being responsible for so many enemy casualties in such a short period of time.
Sir, we were just doing our jobs, she replied. The observation post was well positioned, and we had good communications with supporting elements. Any sniper team with similar training could have achieved the same results. Major Harrison shook his head firmly. That's not accurate, and you know it. I've read your training records and your previous engagement reports. What happened today required exceptional skill, tactical judgment, and courage under extreme pressure. Those qualities can't be taught in a classroom or on a firing range. Thompson nodded agreement with the major's assessment. Maria's shooting today was absolutely phenomenal. Some of those targets were moving, partially concealed, and engaged at ranges where most snipers would struggle to achieve hits on stationary targets under ideal conditions. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a communications specialist carrying a message flimsy marked with high-priority indicators.
Major Harrison read the document quickly and his expression brightened considerably.
This is interesting, he said, looking up from the message. Higher headquarters has directed an immediate investigation into today's engagement, with particular attention to the actions of the sniper team. However, the tone of the message suggests they're looking at this as a positive example rather than searching for problems. Over the following days, Maria found herself the subject of intense interest from various military organizations and media representatives. Word of her actions had apparently reached senior levels of the command structure, and there was considerable interest in documenting the engagement for training purposes and public relations activities. A team of combat historians arrived from Kabul to conduct detailed interviews and reconstruct the timeline of events. They were particularly interested in the technical aspects of long-range precision shooting under combat conditions, and they spent hours reviewing every shot Maria had fired during the engagement. The combination of range, conditions, and target types makes this one of the most technically challenging engagements we've documented, explained Captain Williams, the senior historian. The fact that you achieved such a high hit percentage while under effective enemy fire demonstrates shooting skills that are truly exceptional.
Media representatives were also eager to interview Maria, though she was reluctant to participate in activities that might compromise operational security or put her fellow soldiers at risk.
The Public Affairs Office eventually arranged a carefully controlled interview that focused on general topics rather than specific tactical details.
The interview was conducted by a reporter from a major news network who specialized in military affairs. She asked thoughtful questions about Maria's background, training, and motivations for joining the military. The conversation avoided sensitive operational details while still conveying the significance of what had occurred. "What goes through your mind when you're engaged in this type of situation?" the reporter asked. Maria considered the question carefully before responding. "You fall back on your training and focus on protecting your fellow soldiers. Everything else becomes secondary to completing the mission and bringing everyone home safely." The interview was broadcast several weeks later, as part of a larger story about the role of women in combat operations. Maria watched it from the base recreation room, surrounded by fellow soldiers who offered good-natured commentary about her television debut. She was relieved that the final product focused on professionalism rather than sensationalism. More meaningful to Maria than the media attention was the response from her fellow soldiers and the impact her actions had on base morale. The successful defense against such a sophisticated enemy attack had demonstrated that their training and preparation were effective even against well-organized adversaries. This knowledge boosted confidence throughout the entire unit and reinforced the importance of maintaining high standards in all aspects of their mission.
Several weeks after the engagement, Maria received notification that she was being recommended for the Bronze Star Medal with Valor Device, one of the military's higher decorations for combat heroism. The recommendation cited her exceptional courage and tactical skill in engaging superior enemy forces under extremely hazardous conditions. The award ceremony was held on the base parade ground during the cooler hours of early evening, with the entire garrison formed up in dress uniforms despite the desert setting.
Major Harrison read the citation aloud while Maria stood at attention, feeling somewhat overwhelmed by the formality and attention being directed toward her. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez distinguished herself by exceptional courage and tactical skill, while serving as a sniper team leader during enemy contact near Forward Operating Base Phoenix, Afghanistan. When insurgent forces launched a coordinated attack on a visiting official delegation and base personnel, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez engaged multiple enemy combatants at extended range under effective hostile fire. Her precision marksmanship eliminated key enemy leaders and weapon systems, disrupting the attack and preventing significant friendly casualties. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's actions reflect great credit upon herself, her unit, and the United States Army. As the medal was pinned to her uniform, Maria found herself thinking not about the recognition she was receiving, but about the teammates who had made the mission successful. Thompson's spotting and coordination had been crucial to the tactical success of their engagement. The facility defense team had held their positions under fire, preventing the enemy from achieving their objectives. The Quick Reaction Force had responded rapidly to relieve the observation post when it came under direct assault. Combat was ultimately a team effort, and individual recognition, while appreciated, could never fully capture the contributions of everyone involved in achieving success under dangerous conditions. Maria understood that she had been selected to represent the efforts of many people who had performed their duties with courage and professionalism when it mattered most. The months that followed brought additional recognition and opportunities for Maria. She was selected to attend advanced sniper training at the Army's marksmanship unit, where she worked with some of the finest shooters in the military. The skills she learned there would make her even more effective in future combat operations. More importantly, the engagement at the water treatment facility became a case study used in military schools around the world. The tactical lessons learned from the enemy's sophisticated attack plan and the successful defensive response were incorporated into training programs designed to prepare future soldiers for similar challenges. Years later, when Maria had completed her deployment and returned to civilian life, she would still receive occasional messages from soldiers who had studied her actions that day. Many credited the lessons learned from her engagement with helping them succeed in their own combat situations, completing a circle of professional knowledge that extended far beyond a single afternoon in the Afghan desert. The true measure of her success that day was not found in medals or media coverage, but in the fact that American soldiers and Afghan civilians had returned safely to their families because one woman with exceptional skill and unwavering courage had been in exactly the right place when her country needed her most. A routine visit turned deadly. Her sniper skills saved the entire base.